Hey guys, you're welcome in our YouTube channel Vivekananda Academy of Learning. So today we are going to discuss about one of the most important question of English literature. This question especially may be asked in your masters, यानी कि MA, like semester 1, 2 or whatever. Now what is the question is we will see here. So our question is that so this question can be asked as a long question in colleges and universities. Now let us see how the question can be. So discuss about crisis in Orientalism or an overview of Edward Said's crisis in Orientalism or analysis of Edward Said's crisis in Orientalism or summary of crisis in Orientalism by Edward Said. So in this way this question can be asked. So now for all these questions now we have one answer that will help you a lot to write answers of all these questions. Now let us discuss about its major point and what has been written. Now the first point would be introduction. So Edward Said was a Palestinian born professor and a scholar. Edward Said's Orientalism 1978 is a well-known and most critical work. Edward Said mentioned in his essay Crisis in Orientalism describes the dissimilarity between reality and what text says about reality, using what Orientalist says about the Orient in text. Now, the second thing would be textual attitude. So the first move Said makes in his is establishing the textual attitude of writers, like what seems unexceptionable good sense to these writers is that is a fallacy to assume that the swarming, unpredictable, and problematic mess in which human beings live can understood on the basis of what book's text says. To apply what one gains out of a book literally to reality is to risk folly or ruin. He then sets up two situations that one is when close quarters something relatively unknown and threatening and previously distant. Then the second one, appearance of success. Now he sets these up to describe the Orientalists, the group of intellectuals from the West that have established the main text that describe the East or the Orient. Says Edward Said says, consider Napoleon and Duplessis. Everything they knew more or less about the Orient come from books written in tradition of Orientalism. For the Orient, like the fierce lion, was something to be encountered and dealt with certain extent because the text made the Orient possible. Now, this happened much because of the mysteries of the Orient to the Westerners. Not much was known of the Orient except for what is the text. But it was the text of Orientalists from the West that shaped the image and reality of the Orient. The Orientalists held a textual attitude towards the Orient. Edward Said says, the point I am trying to make here is that the transition from a merely textual apprehensions, formulation, or definition of the Orient to the put in of all these into practice in the Orient did take place. And that Orients had much to do with that sense, if I may use the word in a liberal precocious traditions. Now, the next point, that is precocious traditions. Edward Said's next move is to show the preposterous traditions. He makes this statement, yet, and here we must be very clear, Orientalists overrode the Orient as the system of thought about the Orient. It always rose from a specifically detailed to general transhuman one. An observation about the 10th century Arab poet multiplied itself into a policy towards the Oriental mentality in Egypt, Iraq, or Arabia. This transition comes down to the Westerners waiting to control the Orient. 2. Dev magazines them in a way to make the Orient their own, their slave. Now here again Said says, it is as if on the one hand a being called Orient existed into which all the authoritative, anonymous and traditional Westerners' attitude to the East were dumped unthinkingly, while on the other, true to anecdotal tradition of storytelling, one could nevertheless fail of experiences with or in the Orient that had little to do with generally serviceable being. Next point is that Orientalism and colonization. Now here again Said relates Orientalism to colonizations. However, there is a clear distinction between the two, Orientalism and colonization. Colonization manifests itself in reality, where one group of people physically colonizing another group. Now here Edward Said says again about colonialism. To colonize means at first the identification, indeed the creation of interest. This could be commercial, communicational, religious, military and culture. On the other hand, Orientalism is grounded in text as well. It is the textual attitude of the colonizing exhibit. Orientalism is then a textual and mental colonization of the Orient, and because of this Orientalists could control the Orient. Next point is that role of Orientalists. So here one thing that is important to take into account here is what Said says. As a judge of the Orient, the modern Orientalist does not, as he believes and even says, exist apart from it objectively. The Orientalist stands apart from the Orient, yet still shapes that image and forms a textual opinion of something so far apart from reality. Next, his Orient is not the Orient as it is, but the Orient as it has been orientalized, an unbroken arc of knowledge and power connects the European or Western statesman and he Western Orientalist. It forms the rim of the stage containing the Orient. Said goes on to say. Now what he says, a white middle class Westerner believes it his human prerogative not only to manage the non-white wood but also to own it. Just because of definition, it is not quite as human as we are. It is this dehumanization that Said connects with Orientalism. Next, conclusion. Now what is the conclusion? Whether you would say that summing up. Here Edward Said finishes his essay describing H and the Orient's crisis. The present crisis dramatizes the disparity between text and reality. Yet in the study of Orientalism, he wishes not only to expose the source of Orientalism's views, but also to reflect on its importance for the contemporary intellectual. Rightly feels that to ignore a part of the world now demonstrably encroaching upon him is to avoid reality. So this is avoiding of reality in the crisis. So this much of content you have to write in your question. Hope so you like this video. If you like, do click the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. Okay friends, bye bye. We will meet again with the new video. Bye bye.